What is going on in Calgary? In a season where the performance on the ice has been bad enough, Calgary Flames president Don Maloney has had two brutal interviews in a row that has fans ready with pitchforks and knives. The delusion at the ownership level of this hockey club is at an all-time high, and the optimism of the fan base is kind of at an all-time low. We're going to get into all that more in this video, but first I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I'm Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family, and let's talk about this Maloney Bologna that's been going on lately. And I gotta be honest, I'm gonna kind of just preface this video by saying, look, usually I try and keep it as, hockey focused as possible. After all, that's why we're fans of the team. It's the actual hockey team. But either way, this is a strange situation brewing in Calgary right now with Don Maloney. You could argue with Murray Edwards, with the rest of the ownership, with what's going on with management. And look, a couple days ago, Maloney did, I guess, kind of like an intermission interview session sort of thing, and it was bad. It wasn't well received by fans. He kind of said some things that fans don't like about the vision, I suppose, of the ownership group. It's also been reported that, Brendan Parker tried to get an interview with Craig Conroy, and they're like, no, let's just go with Don Maloney. You don't need to talk to Craig. Now, I can't confirm that. Before, getting all the information, the graphics ready for this video, I really tried to get, the truth in all of this, and I mean, it's interesting is all I'm going to say, trying to get all of the correct information out there. But either way, there's a lot of Maloney Bologna going on right now. And this morning we had another interview and it was just as bad. So Darren Haynes here, he tweeted out, just read Eric Francis's Don Maloney Q&A, and my goodness, if Don's intention was to airdrop gasoline on the fire already burning after his intermission interview, he accomplished that. Comes across as blind to what they are, where they are, and the obvious opportunity before them. So this is an actual, reporter just blatantly outright saying, what the heck is Don Maloney doing here? We had the win column tweeting out ever since this article came out. And don't worry, I'm going to hop into Eric Francis's Sportsnet article here with Maloney. But the win column tweeting out, this is potentially one of the most tone-deaf, idiotic interviews an NHL executive has ever given. Dead last in the league, potential generational talent in the draft, and the Flames are just doubling down on trying to make the playoffs. Nothing will ever change. They continued. So many insane quotes to even mention here, but one that stands out. We prefer a Dallas model where they got Miro Heiskanen at 3, but also got good players in the 20s, in the 30s. The Flames have never picked third and refuse to accept they are missing a top player, which they have been for quite a while now. The entire NHL fan base, and media know the Flames need a rebuild and a top draft pick. The only people in the world who don't think that are running the organization. Wouldn't it be nice if we were like, the Green Bay Packers and their owners are just the fans, the citizens of Green Bay pretty much? Man, it would make things easier. But it's so true. It's so frustrating as Flames fans just constantly being in the mushy middle and, ownership just being blind to what the team actually needs. Yes, they need to make money. Yes, they're not going to outright say, we're going to tank. Of course, they can't say that. That would be, against the rules, I suppose. But it's still, what they are saying isn't going well right now. Maloney even seemed to stumble in the interview a couple days ago by, essentially saying rebuild, retool kind of thing. But either way, without further ado, let's actually get into the article here from Francis. So here's the tweet from Sportsnet. They said, no one has an appetite to just burn it to the ground. So that's in a wide-ranging interview with Eric Francis. Flames President Don Maloney says the team isn't giving up on this season yet, as we sit bottom in the NHL, of course. Absolutely classic. But either way, I'm not going to go over the whole article. If you haven't read it already, I implore you to go do so. It'll probably boil your blood a little bit, but hey, that's just part of being a Flames fan, I suppose. But let's get into what I thought were kind of some of the key quotes and questions here. So, from Maloney, said the only time you enjoy the first pick of the draft is at the draft. There's a lot of suffering to get there, and that's the farthest from our minds, said Maloney. No one has an appetite to just burn it to the studs, take it all down. To many fans, Maloney's stance will come across as tone deaf. The bulk of Flames fans are fed up with striving to remain in the mushy middle and are indeed clamoring for the organization to take a radically different approach with an eye on landing Gavin McKenna or Keaton Verhoff at this summer's draft. I feel for the fans because I know the narrative out there is they should just blow this up. They're not going anywhere. Why aren't we playing these young kids? Just get rid of older guys, get young guys, get draft picks, said Maloney. And that quote is somewhat fair. You know what? They have a job to do at the end of the day. Our job isn't revolving around the Calgary Flames, I suppose. Well, I mean, this one is for me, but you know what I mean. Either way, they do have a job to do, but there's some more heat coming. So if we could trade somebody and get a top 3 pick or a premier prospect, there's no restrictions on us making deals if the deal makes sense with our long-term plan. If GM Craig Conroy got a call today for whoever and it was like, wow, this is good for us long-term, then of course. That's kind of in regards to a lot of people saying Conroy's in a bind here. He's probably trying to make trades and the ownership keeps nixing them. So the idea that we're digging our feet in the sand and saying, no, we're realistic where we're at. We know we've got real things to sort out short term here, but we're going to continue this process of drafting well, developing well, work at deals that make sense to us longer term. What the fans don't get is that we have a team next year that we have to put on the ice. And what happens if some of these younger players aren't quite ready? And then you're the 32nd place team next year, which I think a lot of fans would be fine with as well. But either way, those aren't even the bad quotes. So, question. Is the narrative accurate that the directive from ownership is that there's not going to be a reset or rebuild? And this is the key question here. This is a long response. I've got 2 screenshots for this. So Don Maloney says, no, I don't think that's accurate. We have a collective group here with Dave Nonis, Craig, myself, Brad Pascal, Peter Hanlon, and we discuss how we move forward. We all want to win a cup, yet there's a dynamic in Canada. You have 82 games. You want to sell tickets and get people to come to your games. It's all about money. It all kind of works together. No one has an appetite to just burn it to the studs, take it all down. There's examples out there right now where you're talking potentially decades it can take to rebuild. The draft is such an inexact thing. If you could be guaranteed that you could get a superstar or franchise level player every year, I'm sure ownership of any team would say, okay, yeah, we'll suffer for 2 or 3 years, which has worked for some teams. But we just don't think that's the way for us. We prefer a Dallas model where they got Miro Heiskanen at 3, but also got good players in the 20s and 30s. We've got to be better in our drafting and developing versus saying, let's just lose easy for everybody. We don't want that culture as part of this organization. And that is evident that they don't want that as part of this organization because that's never been the case. The Flames have never had a top 3 pick. And look, Dallas lucked out, obviously, with some of their draft picks, I suppose, and they ended up, panning out. But this is so frustrating to hear that, no, we don't want, high-end picks. We'd rather draft well in the 20s and 30s. What are you saying? Are you just trying to tick off the fans at this point? It honestly is quite aggravating to hear. So, next question. With a top-heavy draft that includes Gavin McKenna, is it not enticing to simply lean into the hand you've been dealt early this year? Don Maloney says, in a fantasy world, yeah. Great. And keep in mind, apparently his tone was a little bit passive-aggressive, but that's rumors, I suppose. Let's continue. He said, unfortunately, this isn't fantasy hockey. That's not even agreement anymore. McKenna is going first. There's very few franchise players in every draft, regardless of where we pick, 1, 5, 10. Our hope is that we get a top-level player, and that's not our focus at all. Oh, sorry, your focus isn't to get a top-level player? What the heck does that mean? This is just making less and less sense. And he's saying in a fantasy world, you get a good player at the top of the draft. In pretty much every draft in the real world, you get a top player. Either way, I'm trying not to get too crazy here, but next question, is there not a lesson to be learned by the fact that the top 4 leading scorers in the league now are all number 1 picks overall, and teams like San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim, and the Islanders have all turned around with their star draft picks leading the way? Maloney says, again, in a fantasy world, it's a very enticing. You have to deal with the real world too. First of all, we're very, very early in the season. Let's see how it plays out the rest of the year for those teams. No disrespect, those teams are really good, but on that side, look at some of the other teams that have been in this. I don't want to say the teams, but they've been down and missed the playoffs for years and years and years, and then you lose your fans, you lose your interest, and nobody wants that. Yes, we know he's talking about the Buffalo Sabres, maybe some other teams that have had, some higher draft picks, not necessarily number 1s like a Detroit or Ottawa, who haven't quite panned out. But it's such backwards thinking. It's totally, yes, they need to make money, and he's just trying to do this in the most PC way, but it's not working. What Maloney's saying is not working for the fans. It does not make sense. It's not the direction the team needs to go, of course. Him bringing up this fantasy world over and over, that's probably what ownership has been living with ever since Murray Edwards took over. It's always been this, hey, we're going to try and put out a competitive team. They're probably not going to be the best team in the league, but they might, stumble their way to a Cinderella Cup run like 04. And sure, 04 was fantastic, some of the best times of our lives, but what has happened since? Sure, there's been a couple of decent seasons here and there, but it's really been mushy middle, and that's the real world. That's not the fantasy world. So I understand why fans are just super upset about this. If you look at Twitter, if you look at Reddit, people are really voicing their opinions, and it's very interesting what a lot of people are saying. Some people are defending Maloney and the ownership. That has to be their burner accounts. Most, true fans of the Flames are really saying, what is going on here? What is this delusion? What is this, nearsighted vision? It's just... oh man, it's a little bit aggravating. Some people are already saying, how do we make our voices heard to ownership? And that's a good thing to discuss. What can we do as fans to make sure ownership sees how displeased we are with them? Let Craig cook. Let, the team maybe just succumb to the, not necessarily tank, but, knowing that maybe, hey, a top draft pick is better than anything else. But either way, this is just a very interesting situation. Hopefully, things can kind of settle down a little bit. We can all focus on hockey, but right now, fans understandably not happy with ownership, and who knows what ownership will do next. We'll just have to see. Now, let's quickly get into tonight's game before we get into the comment of the day. The Flames do play at the Saddle Dome tonight, the home of the ownership. No, just kidding. The Flames do welcome the Don Maloney's favorite team, the Dallas Stars, are in town tonight. This one goes at 8 p.m., the late game on Hockey Night in Canada. It does look like Wolf is going to start, despite Devin Cooley being the best goalie in the NHL statistically right now. But yes, you can catch the actual hockey tonight, not the behind-the-scenes stuff, 8 p.m. at the Dome. Let's get into the comment of the day to wrap up this video. I know this one's been a little bit longer, just so much to discuss, but this one comes from actually a couple videos ago, but it just goes so well with what we were talking about. Flames First says, good decision, happy for Zane. That's, about Zane probably going to the World Juniors. Then he says, the Maloney interview last night seemed like such a PR stunt. Why have a hockey ops guy on talking about your long-term plans? Why not have Connie on? Very weird. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes we don't know about. More of that is coming to light, and I don't know if that's a good thing. It's almost making us more angry as Flames fans. We already have to suffer through, bad performance on the ice, worst team in the NHL, and now all this stuff's happening. It's not exactly peak times to be a Flames fan, but hopefully the future is still bright and there will be peak times ahead. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to what you saw here today and have a wonderful rest of your day.